You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts. What's going on? Welcome to this highlights episode of What's That Sound. My name's Stu Watts, and thank you for joining me today. We've finished another 10 episodes 11 to 20. We had some more amazing guests, guests that produce, guests that record music, guests that, do some amazing things in the music industry. So I'm so stoked that you've joined me on this journey, and I'm stoked that you're here today to check out some of the stuff that you might have missed. It's a highlights episode, so we've got some really cool sections from each one of the episodes, from episodes 11 to 20. So we'll get stuck into it shortly. First of all, again, I just wanted to say thank you. This is all me. I do this podcast myself. I produce it, I record it, I mix it, I put it up online everywhere. I do everything. And so for me, this is really humbling that anyone would actually want to watch this. Of course, I've got some amazing guests on, so that makes sense as well. But if you really do enjoy what I do here, you can send a donation to paypal.me/whatsthatsound. I'll have the link in the show notes. It just a little bit helps. I know it's not a cool Patreon or anything like that, but if you want to show your support for what I do, you can just send a little donation just to help with some of the costs that are associated with doing a podcast like this. Also, if you want to show your support in another way, you can share the podcast. You can do that directly in a conversation with someone, anyone that likes audio, anyone that's into music that you think might get something out of this, someone that wants to get into the music industry, being a producer or an engineer or anything like that. You can have a conversation and let them know that this podcast exists. Share it in a DM, share it on your stories on Instagram, repost the TikToks. All of those little things go such a long way. It's just, seriously, it just spreads more organically via doing those sorts of things. So those little things help. And of course, hit follow or subscribe on all of the platforms. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe. That way you can stay up to date with all of the new content. And without further ado, let's get into the first little clip. This one was episode 11 with IconicBeats, and we talked about why communication with your artists that you're working with in relation to mixing is so important. So understanding what the client actually wants before you even touch any of the tracks is really important to just make that process go a lot smoother. And when it comes to revisions, if they've got things that they wanted to point out to you, communication is key. So let's get into it. This was from episode 11 with IconicBeats.
I think I've had this a couple times, but it'll be an artist that wants me to mix their stuff.
Yep.
And before we start, I just make sure like they tell me what they want from it. And yeah, certain artists, sometimes I found they don't like the end result that I do because it's a bit too swayed from their initial reference.
Sure.
And I think sometimes what I've done is I've just accepted that that's how they feel.
Yep.
But other times I try and make a compromise, and I try like explain to them the reasons why I made certain things sound the way they did.
Yep.
And if they don't like it at the end of the day, like it's up to the client. Like I'm not gonna have hurt feelings and try to like fight them on it and try to be like, I'm right, you're wrong. I just let them, because they're the one, it's their music.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I've had that a few times, and yeah, like I said, I just let them make the final decision.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
I know I'm gonna do a good job, but if it's not what they want at the end of the day, it's not what they want.
Totally. And I think a lot of that comes down to the communication that happens prior to you doing the job. And so do you have a certain way of going about communicating with a new client prior to starting a job, or is it different every time?
I mean, it could be, it's a little bit different every time. But for new artists, I kind of just get them to tell me like exactly what they want from it. And if they kind of, in that process of pre-production, let's say, if they have an expectation that I don't think I'm going to be able to meet, I'll be open and honest before we even begin work. Because then it's like, at least this artist knows, like, I might not be able to meet that expectation of that certain thing that they asked for. So I guess doing that, it removes a bit of pressure also, but also like disappointing the clients. Because then, you've kind of let them know.
Well, I think it's good because at the end of the day, we and all of these conversations revolve around us being in a service industry. Like our job is to provide someone with a service. You know, they're coming to us with an idea of what they want. Whether they can explain it very well or not, all we can do is to try and understand what they want at the end of it before we've even started it. And that's where that clear communication, being like, tell me more about what you want. Tell me your influences. Give me reference tracks. Tell me a great mix that you loved recently that I can listen to, so I can try and fully understand what that picture is before I even touch the track.
And a lot of artists don't know what they want. And that's a hard thing to work around, because I've had a few artists like that. And that just makes the process a little bit more difficult and a little bit more experimental. But I think if it's clear before anything begins, then it's kind of pressure off both people, because it's like, if you don't know what you want, I'm going to try a few things and see what you like, and then we'll see how we go.
Nice one. Well, with all of these podcasts, clips, as always, you can go back and check out the full episodes. I'll also have links to each of the guests' Instagram pages, so you can chuck them a follow and check out what they're doing. You can get into their DMs if you want to try and work with them. That'll all be in the show notes, easy for you to access. Nice one. Episode 12 is the next clip. I talked with Riverine, who's a producer and a mixer and mastering engineer from Melbourne. In this clip, we talked about why it's important not to sit on your releases, why you should keep pushing forward and keep making new music. Don't sit on things. It's a great talk, so let's get into it. I don't need to tell you what it's all about. You can just watch it, so let's go. Tell us about your own project and how that differs from working with other artists.
Yeah, well, it's got to be the most fulfilling, I think, like doing everything in a project, you know, not just sort of seeing someone else's vision through to the end. You'd know this too, you know, you work on your own releases as well. Like, not just, like I said, seeing someone else's vision through, but executing your own with your own skill set. With that song in particular, that was all done in one night. It was just one of those like lightning in a bottle things. Like I think I'd had like just the worst day mentally, and I just needed to do something with that. I couldn't just sit there and be all depressed. So I picked up a guitar. I wrote some melodies. Lyrics fell into place super easy. I mixed and mastered it and uploaded it, like, I think the next day.
Good. I think there's something to say about that. Like, there's confidence behind that. You know, it's like, I think a lot of people, I mean, you would know this, and working with so many different artists, is just the amount of times you hear people say, oh, I've got to do this before I can do that, or I can, just let me, it's not ready yet, or this. It's like, I honestly tell all of my artists is like, there's always the next song, you know, and I think that is a really important mindset to have. Like, they can't all be the best song you've ever written, and some of them are going to be. That's the point to me, is that, like, if you hold yourself back from keeping moving and release stuff and put stuff out and move on to the next thing, you potentially will stop yourself from writing the best song you've ever written.
Yeah, there's something to that, isn't there? Like, when I know I need to get a release out, when I know it's been a while, and I've sort of like emptied the clip, so to say, like I've put all my best stuff out, I feel more inclined to write. Whereas if I'm sitting on like 8 great songs, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, when they're right, you know, when the mix is dialed in, there's not really any like urge for me to get any more music done. So you're right. And there's I think you touched on a couple things too. There's also like, where people get tripped up is like this scarcity mindset that like this song I wrote is this like precious perfect thing that I need to execute perfectly and hold on to. And You often find, at least in my experience, the kinds of people that say, oh, when this, then I'll do that. I rarely see that thing ever coming out. Usually it gets put on the shelf for so long and perfected for so long that by the time it's perfect, they're over it. They're not excited and it never comes out.
And everyone else has moved on as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what's beautiful about the digital age is it allows us to shortcut the time between idea and excitement and then being able to share that with the world.
Yeah, 100%. I think like excitement's such a good word to use. And I think that I think more people like should rely on their gut instinct and excitement as a factor, as a major factor to what they're actually working on at the time, and listening to yourself and being like, am I having fun here? Because at the end of the day, we make music because it's an enjoyable thing to do. For most people, I would say 99% of people, like it's an enjoyable thing. So if you're not listening to yourself when something's telling you, okay, this isn't right, or or the opposite side, I'm loving this. This is awesome. Everyone has to hear this. Put it out as soon as possible. Don't hold on to something and perfect it, because at the end of the day, there's no such thing as perfection. There's just not. And what's perfect what's perfect in your ears is not perfect in someone else's ears. Awesome. Episode 13 is the next clip. Dr. Mike Trubetskov was my guest. He's a metal producer, musician, engineer. He's an all-round legend. This clip, we talk about arrangement in metal music and why it differs quite dramatically from a lot of pop music and things like that, but how you can still use some of those techniques in other styles of music. So let's go. The arrangement of metal music is, and I talked to you about this before the podcast, is I see a similarity with dance music, specifically more like, deep house or trance or something like that, where metal takes you on a journey. The songs sometimes, and a lot of the time, are over 5-6 minutes long because of the way that they encapsulate an emotion. Yes. And the songs build and go on journeys, and they because for me, I work a lot in the pop world, even if it is in punk rock or, indie or whatever, it's pop based. Yes. The song structures are pretty generic with some changes. You might throw in a bridge or you might cut something in half, but for the most part, it's pop. Yeah. How do you know that you're doing the right arrangement for a metal song?
That's an interesting one. Let me take it back. So it was a complex, it was a complicated idea to break through at first when I was in an experienced mixer back in the day. When I first received my 11-minute song to mix, I was like, how the fuck do I approach it? Plus, the structure is irregular. It doesn't, like, some of those songs, they don't have any repeating pattern, or maybe it repeats once, like you have two choruses, that's it. Yeah. All the other things are just riffs, developments and all. And the answer is you just go for it and you just analyze it, you listen to it and you set up markers, and eventually at some point it becomes clearer. It's probably similar to an exposure with your progressive rock, progressive metal, Dream Theater sort of music, which is complex and you have to digest it, and similar to a classic music, I guess. Yeah. But if we're talking about arrangement itself, well, it's just more sophisticated. I try to make it diverse so that if the song is that long already, probably makes sense to go all in and make second verse different from the first one. I like, even when I was recording my stuff, which was 6:30 one song, I remember going for a different sound for the chorus on guitar quads, particularly. So these little minuscule details change the feel. Quads are more open, so like I used a crunch channel instead of high gain, so they have more attack, and it just gives a different feel. It's more open, it's a bit more percussive, even though the melodics is the same. So, but I guess the answer is just it's more complex,
and you go for feel.
You go by feel of the firstly entire thing, and I talk about that a lot. Losing that entire feel is shit, and you have to always remember that big picture in mind, because it's getting really easy as a downside to dive into details and lose the overall momentum. You just go for it.
I think it's great what you mentioned about, just different tonalities and like sonics is, again, it's a journey. It's you really are doing multiple things. It's like a storybook in a way. You turn the page and there's new pictures, there's new colors, there's new, say if it goes to a darker area, you're going to use different, sorts of sounds on the guitars, on the bass, potentially on the vocals,
That's correct.
adding reverbs, delays that put you in a place.
Yes.
And it's fascinating and I love it. It just makes me, it excites me because I think that's why most people are producers in the first place, is because they hear sounds that other people don't hear, you know, and we go, fuck, that's so cool.
Yeah,
Let's
and
try
I want to share it with others.
Yeah, and achieve it.
It is.
Like, how do I get there? So it's such a cool, I feel like if you're going on those sorts of journeys, whether it is, dance music or, even hip hop somewhat, you're using different effects for different sections of the songs and stuff like that. It's just such an exciting, thing.
I think that universally leads to a production journey, and coming up with a cool, tight, sophisticated production with all the colors particularly dialed in for sections, and even in hip hop you can record vocals differently. You can record them with different color if a verse is the same. You can try a different double. You can try call out layers left and right and top and bottoms, whatever it is, different synths, different underneath layers, and they're subtle, but they make a person feel. You're like a manipulator of one's feelings, but you can control and select which way you want it. It can be dark or it can be enlightening. And I think this is a very valuable conversation about art in general and how to create art that speaks to a person and provides a message, hopefully a positive one.
Yeah. Episode 14 is the next clip. I talked with MixedByTrae, who's an absolutely lovely guy. He is a mixing and mastering engineer, works on a lot of pop, some hip hop. And this clip, we talk about why it's important to educate your artists that you're working with on things that they can do better next time. You're in this for the long run. It's important that you want to get the most out of the artists that you work with, and it also helps them improve. And that's what we talk about in this clip. So let's get into it. You made another important point that, having the good source material so that you can have an easier mix. I think is really important. And a lot of that time it comes back to the mixing engineer of educating the artist and being like you said, with the auto-tune or, mic technique or,
it's so particular. But like at the end of the day, it's like, if this is a client that's going to stick around, it's going to make my job easier. It's going to make their work better.
Yes.
Like, I feel like at the moment, there's a lot of finicky things that I don't do. Like, I don't do recording. Like, I don't enjoy recording as like an engineer.
Yep.
I feel like sometimes I just don't have the energy to help the artist get to what they need.
Sure, yeah.
But it's like as simple as like timing and vocal editing and like cutting out breaths and stuff. So each artist is different. One artist might want their breaths, one artist might not. So it's like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with that as like an engineer. The artist can do that. They can deal with that. They can cut it and like fix it up. And if it's something that I feel like, something's clipping or something, like I can just fix it quickly.
Sure, yeah.
But in terms of like tune, the timing and the vocal editing, I leave that up to the artist now.
Yeah,
because I'm just like, if I change the timing's wrong, it's like my fault. So it's like, it's better to like help the artist kind of understand that, that stuff in terms of like structure and everything as well.
Yeah.
Can like be all them. And
so
when it comes to me, it's easy. Yeah.
It's really empowering, I think, for an artist. From my experience, artists want to learn as well. Like everyone just wants to do the best that they can do.
Yeah.
And if we can be people, whether it's our job or not, whether we can educate people on, hey, maybe next time do this, do that.
Yeah.
It actually lets them know that you care.
Yeah.
For one. And like you said, you just get a better result. It empowers them. They feel more confident when they're sending you stems as well.
Exactly.
You just notice over time when you've been working with people and you communicate heaps and you give them feedback and they give you feedback, that it just gets easier and they actually feel better about sending something to you.
Yeah, more trust.
And in the start, they might be like, oh, it's not right. It doesn't, I need you to do this. I need it. And then once it's like 6 or 7 or 8 songs in, they're like, do your thing because you
Yeah.
know exactly what I want.
No, exactly.
And it's just so much better.
It's a beautiful feeling as well to have like an artist kind of like really kind of trust you, or you know, they understand that you know what they want and what sound or what effects to use and what sort of space. And but yeah, it's that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like for me, I'm trying to build as many relationships with as many people as possible in that sense to, you know, help the community.
Yeah, for sure. Nice one. Moving right along. This is episode 15. This was with Lauren Coutts, who's a singer-songwriter and producer. Awesome chat. We talked in depth about songwriting actually, and no surprise, this little clip is all about that. Why songwriting and great songwriting equals a great song and how important the actual songwriting process is. So let's get into it. Episode 15, Lauren Coutts.
Production is so much fun, and production, like, there is so much that you can do. But if the bones of the song aren't great, it's so hard to produce something awesome. Like, it's just so hard to get a great song out of that. So like songwriting to me is really just making sure that the bones are really good, and it's making sure that the melody and the lyrics all kind of make sense with one another. And for me, like personally, I want the lyrics to be just as honest as possible, and that is tricky. It takes like a real writer, and I don't think that this is talked about very much in music, but if you're an artist and you're a songwriter, you like are an author in some ways. Like you're the structure of your like poetry really matters, and that's like that's what it means to be a musician in some sense. So I'm very passionate about getting that right before production starts and before you go and try and outproduce something that maybe wasn't that great to begin with. And I guess some of the fundamentals of that is just like, can you play it just with the chords on piano and still feel something? Does it feel true to you, but also kind of like impactful to other people as well? And have you really kind of thought all of it through? Like, have you been meticulous about the like rhyme scheme or like, I think there's just like a lot of times where songs can be so successful and so incredible, but there's just like a few filler lyrics in there, or there's just like a melody that's a bit of the melodic cliche, like you just kind of phoned it in for that moment. And I think that's like, I don't know, like it's really kind of telling of the overall product. Like you can't try really hard at like getting the best kick sound ever if there's like a bunch of lyrics over the top of it that were just phoned in. Like
yeah. I mean, it's at the end of the day, music is an emotional thing. You know, all styles of music elicit some sort of emotional response, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's, you know, extreme happiness or anything like that. So, and I love what you said about the control and controlling a lyric. And I think that's standing out so much to me, because it's like you need the confidence to be able to own your song. And even as a producer, it's someone else's song, but it's really hard at the start to be like really confident, be like, I know I'm on the right path with this song, and I know that I know where to take it. And it's the same thing with songwriting. It's like, if you aren't confident about that lyric, then sit down and analyze what is it about that is standing out to you as being weak, or you're lacking the confidence and ownership of that lyric. Because like you said, you can just kind of grab whatever lyric, you can grab whatever melody, but at the end of the day, if you don't feel really confident about it and you aren't owning that lyric, it's going to tell at the end of that, when people are listening to the song, they're going to be able to hear that and be like, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Hope you're loving this so far. I'm loving bringing this highlights episode to you. This next clip is episode 16 with Sam Swain. We talk about production choices and making sure all of your choices that you're making when you're recording suit the style of the song and how you can make each element stand out. So let's get into it. This was with Sam Swain. Let's go.
Well, you know, it's funny, like with you saying, like even showcasing the noise or something like that reminds me of when another thing I used to love to do with the Beatles is, and you still can, you can often find on YouTube just like someone's uploaded just the drums or something like that of a track. And I love like how often you can hear someone like talking in the background or George's like acoustic tracks, he's mumbling, that kind of stuff. I just always loved those little Easter eggs. And same also going back to Demon Days, like albums like that are really layered. And if anything, I think a lot of my style originally started coming from, I was always, and I've grown from this, but at the start I was like, there should just be heaps of layers, every song heaps of layers. And so now I'm a little bit more like, okay, sometimes that's not needed, but I think to just kind of try and fit all those layers in, if you actually do want to be able to hear the different layers, they all need to have a lot of personality as well. So I think I was never shy of like putting a lot of character on a track or on a whatever. So that, you know, if you've got a lot of guitar parts, the guitars need to sound very different, or if you want this random sound to cut, it needs to have a very unique frequency response for the song or whatever like that. So yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that
like
what you meant by restraint?
Yeah. Well, I mean like a thing, all of the elements having a space that they sit in. And so, you know, obviously when you have loud guitars, they're loud. Like I've noticed that as well. Like the guitars are really just like there. They're louder than a lot of the vocals, the drums. The drums kind of sit in the back for a lot of like the heavier stuff, which you don't always see. So yeah, where did that all come from? Where was that influence from?
Cheers, man. Yeah, that's an interesting insight. Definitely in the sophisticated dingo world, we definitely push the envelope with that. Well, I remember, I have a vivid memory. Actually, this is another uni memory. I think my friend Dave Turner, who was a lecturer then, we were talking about Motown albums and how shockingly quiet the drums are sometimes. And that sometimes is because, you know, they're in a room and it's just in the back of the room or whatever. But I remember we had this great chat about how it still had impact, and it was really interesting to sort of just to try and get our brains around, like, how could you have impact and not have loud drums? And the other thing is, I think at the start I probably mixed drums way too loud. So I think I slowly was like challenging myself to do less of that. I don't know. I think it probably comes back to that band thing as well. Sometimes when I do play guitar in bands, I often turn the guitar too loud. So it's just like, but that sort of feeling and wall of soundy kind of feeling as well. I like that. And I also love in a mix, I try and put like high contrast between different elements, like you said, like, so you got all the spaces, but also between different sections. So I'm always tempted to make the jump from the pre to the chorus or whatever, like, pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, moving right along. This next clip was episode 17 with Chris Themelco, who's a metal musician, producer, engineer. He's a gun. And in this clip, we talk about why you need to be focused in recording sessions and also the amount of different hats that you have to wear as a producer in a session. So great chat. Let's get into it. Episode 17, Chris Themelco. Let's go.
I remember a few years back, and it like really burnt me. I did 3 months straight of tracking and like 6 days a week,
dude.
And it like broke me,
man.
Like proper broke me. And I pretty much vowed to never do that again.
And for anyone that doesn't understand why, it's because, I mean, you can tell your experience, but for me, it's like the focus that is required when you're recording. You cannot have any distractions. Like when you're mixing or something, you might have your phone next to you if something pings. It's okay. You might be distracted temporarily, but it's quicker to get back into it. if someone's sitting in the room waiting for you to get a guitar tone, you can't sit on your phone. Yeah. So it's all in.
Yeah.
It's all in. So I can't even match 6 days in, for weeks on end.
It was rough.
Your life would have been like put on complete hold. And
2 albums and an EP. I remember very specifically. There's like still listen back to those and I'm like, they sound great. I'm like, I don't remember much of it though. But it is like, I remember we'd work with the producer from the US a while back who came down, and I just remember one of the drum tracking days I just mentioned like, if seeing as we finished drums a bit earlier, if you want to do guitars when we get back, let me know, because like I can just jump on and hook that up. And he was just like, oh hell no dude. He's like, dude, after a day of drums, like there's no chance. And I was like, I felt so happy that was because like he's worked on some awesome stuff, and he's like, I always felt that way after tracking. I'm like, I'm cooked. Like I'm like, I didn't play anything, but I'm utterly broken.
Yep.
And it's like, oh no, that's actually a thing. Like a lot of these dudes, like, no, like this is why burnout's real in this industry, because you gotta realize like people talk about how like our industry is the worst it's been. There's a lot of that going around where it's like there's the least amount of money in it, whatever. And like, while I understand that point of it, we're also at a time where you have the most access to everything. Like recording gear is arguably cheap. It's not to say it's cheap in terms of like everyday, people who look at it. But as an engineer, quality gear is cheaper than it's ever been. Access to the craft.
And I think the actual, like, there's different levels as well.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was like good or shit.
Yes, 100%.
And now it's like shit, pretty shit, good.
It's like not so shit.
Yeah, and it's, but it's so tiered.
And it's, I honestly like that that's the thing. The flip side is no one can afford a separate producer to sit with an engineer. Unless you're up, I mean, even when you look at dudes like Parkway Drive and all that, you look at the way they do it. Now, their guitarist is doing a lot of the engineering while someone else produces because it's just going to be more efficient. So I think the thing that I forget sometimes is like the role I thought I was going to do when I got into this was be an engineer, do the mixing. And then it was, oh no, you're a producer who is also engineering and mixing. And then it was, you're a partial psychologist. And it's like you have to wear so many hats. Like I reckon I spend a third of the time coaching the band, then producing, then engineering, and you have to do all of that at once. For like 8-9 hours straight. It's really taxing.
So intense.
And like I feel more comfortable now to say that is really taxing, because I used to just be like, no, you just deal with it. It's like, that's how it is. But it's like, no, it's really hard. Like there's a reason not a lot of people make it in this industry. And 10 years in, people are still surprised when they're like, oh, so what else do you do? I'm like, I mean, I have other ventures, but like, no, this is my job. This is the thing that keeps a roof over my head and has since 2015 or something. And a lot of people are still weirded out by that, because it's like, oh, you can do that. And I'm like, well, I think some people can do that.
Nice one. Next clip, episode 18 with SB90, who is a pop, hip hop producer, songwriter, engineer. He is doing some really, really cool stuff, so keep an eye on him as well. But in this clip, we talked about how he moved from being a part-time producer and engineer at the start into a full-time freelance engineer and producer. It's got some really great tips, things that you can do now if you are just starting up and wanting to get into the game full-time. So let's go, SB90, episode 18.
During the time I was studying, I started setting up a home studio just at mum's place. And I actually started just recording people from my class. So like there was another rapper in my class and I started recording him and he would pay me. And so that was kind of like the first time I had someone I was working with in person who was kind of like paying me consistently.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool. This kind of feels kind of good. And then I think I just started kind of advertising myself online. Like I was doing a lot of Facebook ads and stuff. And I kind of just set up a pretty basic website with like an inquiry form and just like some stuff I'd produced. And I kind of just started taking on like a lot of recording clients and a lot of mixing jobs and kind of production stuff. I was doing it like super cheap, but at that point I was just kind of like happy to get paid to do something I liked doing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that, that influx of stuff, were you working part-time as well? Or were you just doing this full-time and just focusing on the music?
So when I started, I was working at Woolies.
Yep.
I was checkout chick, bagging groceries. And one of my first goals was kind of like, okay, if I can make enough consistently week by week where I'm making more from music than I'm making from Woolies, which wasn't very much, it was probably like $300 to $500 a week or whatever. If I can at least kind of like feel like I can mash that, then I'll quit my job at Woolies and I'll just do it full time.
Yeah.
And I think it took me maybe like 2-3 months before I got to the point where I felt confident to just rely on at least just the kind of production income where I didn't need a part-time job. I still wasn't making a lot, but it was just enough where I felt like I still had some money kind of thing.
Well, it's a great thing to have those sorts of goals that are achievable, that aren't too, like huge and out of the picture, where, like you said, you just matched it to your current income. You're like, okay, $300-$500 a week. If I can make that off music, then I'm laughing. That is such a great sort of, thing to do right at the start. And, you made the steps, you created your own studio, you started working with people in person, you set yourself that goal of income. It's all little steps towards a more professional, person in the music industry that people can look to and not say, oh, they're just doing it as a side gig.
Yeah, that's so true. And everything's just incremental with when it comes to like, building a business, or you don't go from like, wanting to be a professional to then, making however much like a year where you can, it's like, it's all like small steps, baby steps. But then you look back like 5 years later and you're like, oh, I've come like a long way from where I started.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when you can say like, this is my full-time job, even then things go in waves. You might have a busy like 3 months or 4 months where you like can't even think about anything else. And then you might just have a couple of months that are completely dead and you're like, shit, all right, well, I have to just rely on the income that I made from those few months. And so it's not like when you get there and when you're full-time, it's not like you're constantly working and it's always busy anyway. So you have to be smart about how you finance, how you, put some money aside or whatever it might be, if you're paying rent, all those sorts of things you have to factor in. And so when you're doing it in the early stages, when you're only making a smaller amount of money, if you're smart about those things from the start, you can be better at them when you are a full-timer. Awesome. We're nearly at the end, but stay with us. We've got 2 more clips for you. So this one's from episode 19 with Stefan Lagatta, who does a lot of hip hop and drill music. We talk about his studio and how he built that up in his full episode. But in this clip, we talk about melodic structures and what that means and why it's so important when you're songwriting and recording. We talk about lead songwriting, lead vocals and harmonies and things like that. So let's get into it. Enough talk. Stefan Lagatta, episode 19. Let's go.
Lots of different singer-songwriters, and even rappers can do it now if they're doing like melodic rap, I feel, with the melodies.
Yeah.
But how they're able to build tension, I think that's so important as a songwriter. Because I hear a lot of people that come by and the melodies are kind of perhaps stagnant. They're not moving in a direction. They're not sort of building and creating any tension and then releasing that tension. But I feel like it's so important if you want to draw a listener in and keep them.
The other thing I find on that, which is a great point, and the other thing I find on that is either that or the opposite, where people are doing too many melodic movements.
Okay.
And then as well, the same thing, it doesn't build any tension because you don't have an anchor point for where you think the melody sits.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. So that's cool, man. Did you obviously at your, university, you were learning a bit about music theory and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about your production and mixing and all that sort of stuff and how that allowed you to learn more about the things that you were just talking about.
I mean, at uni, learning things like counterpoint and harmony and voice leading. So beforehand, I didn't really understand. I didn't know about voice leading essentially, and voice leading, you can see certain patterns with melodies. So your melody might go up, slowly build up, and then it might come down. But it's always sort of that sort of free moving pattern. Whereas I think beforehand, if I was trying to write a song or if I was trying to program a melody on a synth, for example, my melody would kind of go up and then down and then like back up. And it wasn't very smooth. It was it wasn't nice to follow as well. It wasn't pleasant to the ear.
Kind of forced. Kind of like you're putting things in a place that they don't necessarily fit in.
Yeah, and it's not really telling a story. It's not it's not really going anywhere.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean that really helped. And then also downloading a few MIDI packs of songs that have been released, and then seeing, okay, what are these chords, and seeing the actual voice leading, like where is this lead melody going, even the notes underneath, like the bass note, where is that going, what sort of movement. The bass is not going to jump down and then back up, and then if it's
intricacies like that, it's great.
So that really helped a lot as well.
And so taking that into your sessions and working with artists, what are some commonalities that you have found working with artists? Do you find them having a good understanding of that, a lack of understanding of that, and how can you help them?
Depends really who I'm working with. Some people just come in with like just a lead melody, and that's great. Like most of the time, great. I leave it as it is. Maybe if they're struggling to sing, I might coach them. Hey, sing it more breathy, sing it more like this, sing it softer, do an octave harmony, for example. And then where there's room, I might say, hey, like I can play it back and I can kind of picture a melody in my head, and I might say, hey, sing this. And they might sing that. I go ahead, record that, play it back, and then, hey, like that's a 2-part harmony. It sounds great.
Sure, yeah.
Let's add another. So we might add like a bass harmony. Hey, like sing this. Or I might play it. I have a little toy keyboard, and I just play it on the toy keyboard, sing this note. So easy just to whip that toy keyboard out, put it on, press it,
100%,
rather than like routes MIDI and
facts.
You need if you got an idea, like you have to get it down straight away.
It's a really great point. And even something like voice memos and stuff, people demoing anything like that, it's like as soon as and we've all been there, and I continue to be there, is like we'll be talking about a song and, you know, you'll pick up a guitar just because you have that spur of the moment thing, you'll play it. And then 5 minutes later, like, fuck, what was that idea that I had 5 minutes ago? And it's already gone. So All right, up to the last clip for today, episode 20. This only came out last week. I talked with Aaron Dobos, who's been around for a while. He's been doing this for a long time. He is a rock music producer, engineer, mixing, does it all. He works out of Sing Sing in Melbourne currently, but he's building his own studio. You can listen to the full episode. It's out everywhere. But this clip, we talked about how he likes to work quickly when he is mixing, and how it's important for him to get to what sounds like a finished song as soon as possible so that you can quickly find the faults in a mix. Awesome. Let's get into it. Episode 20, Aaron Dobos. And so how do you know when something's done then?
When I'm just like staring at the screen and I'm like, I don't know anymore. Just sort of, when I'm just like, when I've listened to it 5 times in a row and I've done nothing. I'm like, look, that's probably it, I guess. And because I like to work really fast, it's just like you kind of reach that point really quickly. And I heard someone say something that's like, it doesn't matter if it's wrong, if you get there quickly, you know it's wrong quicker.
Right. That's
like,
cool.
So just do it and just back yourself. And then if you need to tweak it later, then, you know, I might not send it to the artist when it's done. I might wait 2 days and pull it up again and listen to it at home, or listen to it on a run, or like when I go for a walk, or if I'm on the train or something like that, I might listen to it and be like, oh, actually, nah, not in love with it. And then go back and tweak.
Yeah.
But
I think some really important points there, like one being the get there fast, because you can't, like you said, you can always fix things later. I think it's really important to move through a song, and like you said, you love to get it sounding like a song as quickly as possible. But even for people that might be just starting out, it's more important to get everything there rather than going, yep, this is the drum sound I want for 10 hours.
Yeah,
get it there quicker,
definitely.
and get the song sounding like a song. Even if it's not the finished mix, get it to that point quicker so that you can go, I can easily hear what needs fixing. That's the first great point. Yeah. Go on.
Then you're working on emotion at that point. It's a song, and then you're working on emotion, which is sort of what it's all about.
Yeah, and the other point that I liked was don't necessarily just send it as soon as you're done. Take that time to approach it from different headspaces, work on something else and then come back to it, listen to some really great music that you love, then come back to it and go, what am I feeling now? Like you said, using obviously different headphones, different speaker systems or anything like that. They're the obvious ones. But I think more emotion and taking yourself out of that feeling that you had when you were mixing it is a big thing, because then you can be less attached to it and be like, no, what stands out?
Definitely. You're able to see the forest for the trees in a sense. Like you can take back and be like, okay, how does this work as a song?
Yeah.
I don't hear the hours I spent tweaking this kick drum or faffing around with your guitar automation or something. It's just like, how does it feel as a song? What is it missing? What does it have? What do I need to give it?
Well, that's it. That is the end of this highlights episode. I hope you loved it as much as I did. Again, share this around everywhere. Follow, subscribe. We want to see you back for the next season. Don't know when that next season is starting, but it won't be too far away. I've already recorded a couple of episodes, so it won't be too far away. The structure for next season is changing. I'm going to be releasing episodes fortnightly instead of weekly, as I've just found it's taking up a lot of time, and I really want to keep doing this for you guys, but the most effective way for me to be able to do that is to release it fortnightly. So don't worry, it's still coming. There's still more episodes, still some more amazing guests coming. Season 3 is coming soon, so stay tuned. But thank you again for watching. Love you all. Again, my name's Stu Watts. And this has been the highlights episode of season 2 of What's That Sound podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening to What's That Sound. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.